Welcome everyone to our Supercharge Your Productivity event. Today we're hosting Taylor Jacobson from Focusmate, and thank you all for coming for Design Buddies. I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies this April 2020 just to have a safe space, inclusive space for designers to connect and meet each other. And since then, I've seen it grow to nearly 9,000 members. So really thank you all for sharing Design Buddies with your friends. We're trying to become the largest design community in the world. We really appreciate you. And with that said, we're going to hand it off to Derek, who is one of Design Buddies admins and our lead content creators.
Thanks, Grace. So I'm super excited to have Taylor on today. I started using Focusmate as a productivity tool a little more than a year ago at this point. And it's been my saving grace during the past few months, especially now that more people have shifted over to remote working. That might be the situation for you. So over the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so, we're really going to be jumping into learning a bit about Taylor, his background, how he started the idea for Focusmate, and also just talk a bit about some of the benefits it can provide you during this time. And if you stick around until the end, we're actually going to be announcing a very special exclusive group for designers and anyone who's looking to connect with other design buddies. That's something we can look out. You can look out for. And if you're not able to stick around for the whole session, feel free to check out our YouTube because we'll be posting this on there. So with that, Taylor, can you tell us a bit about yourself, kind of where you are right now, and then how the role you play for Focusmate?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, just it's so great to be here. It's cool to watch so many people trickle in from across the U.S. and around the world, and just a testament to what you said, Grace, about being a safe and inclusive space. Which, you asked me where I am. And, before we opened the waiting room and started welcoming people in, we were sort of just talking about just like the levels of anxiety that everyone has right now. So I think, so physically where I am is I'm near Boston. I'm at my mom's place. I live in New York City. I just I had to get out of New York City. It was just too intense. So I think that, I share that in part as just like a part of where I am is like, it's a very intense time, and we'll get into talking more about Focusmate, but I think, it's a big similarity between this community and what we've created at Focusmate is just creating a really safe place, which maybe doesn't have an obvious connection to productivity. I think it will become really obvious as we get into the conversation. And then, my role, I started Focusmate about 4 years ago now. Really just, I had the idea very serendipitously. You could say I am a lifelong procrastinator. I don't think I realized how much I procrastinate until I started working remotely 10 years ago, and just not having people around, not having the structure of like somebody's expecting me to be at an office at 9 a.m. So I better get in the shower and do some stuff. And nobody walking behind my desk to see if I was doing anything. So yeah, long predating COVID and basically everybody working from home, I had my own very intense, sort of being thrust into the world of being isolated and working from home. I just tried every productivity trick and hack and software and you name it, and just continued to struggle. And then, a few years ago, I was talking to a friend who's also a huge productivity enthusiast and procrastinator, and kind of was just fantasizing about if we could just have exactly what we need to fix our lives, what would we do? And so I pitched him on the idea of basically a Focusmate session. So if you want, I can sort of get into a little bit what that was, but that's sort of the long and short of how it all began.
Sure. I think that's a really good high level kind of description of where you are right now physically, but also a lot of what you said does resonate with me, and I'm sure a lot of others during this time where mental health is kind of at a all-time low because there's so much going on in the world, and in a way, I think having this pandemic and everyone being social distancing at home, that really has taken a hit to my mental health, and in terms of my productivity, I think a lot of people want to stay productive during this time, but ultimately, I think it's important to realize that mental health really does come first. Kind of just asking your friends, checking in on them, checking in on your family, and just making sure all of that is kind of settled before you move forward and really even talk about productivity and work at all. So with that, yeah, I do want to hear a little more about how you got started with Focusmate, how you came up with the idea, kind of jump into that a bit.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just bookmark this. So somebody hold us accountable to actually talk about the connection between mental health and productivity. Because I mean, may sound obvious, but the connection is really profound. Yeah. So how did we get started? Well, so kind of going back to this moment where I was talking to my friend, Jake, I just said, hey, this is back when Skype was what people used. I said, let's get on Skype for a couple hours and let's just tell each other exactly what we're going to work on. We'll make a list, we'll chat it to each other in Skype, and then we'll just sit there with each other while we work. So we weren't collaborating, we weren't talking, we just made a very detailed plan, and then we just kept each other company and we'd update each other as we went. And that was just super effective, basically. After trying like 100 different things, both of us were like, wow, this really simple structure, this really hands-on structure just works. And I in my 20s especially, I tried a lot of different entrepreneurial endeavors. And so I was sort of at a point where I was like, I need to be discerning about whether I want to create this as a project. And so I actually just sat on the idea for a while, a good 6 months. Y'all are probably to varying degrees familiar with lean startup and other ideas, other concepts, how to validate ideas. So I just started, I started a Facebook group and just sort of said, hey, if people want to do these co-working sessions with each other, just post, just say, hey, is anyone free tomorrow afternoon? And you can DM each other your Skype IDs or whatever. And, I would go in other Facebook groups and I would just share, hey, we're doing this thing, it's free. Here's why, and I would just tell kind of a little of my story, but very cheap, quick ways of just seeing if people were interested in this thing. So that's really how it got started, is very slowly, very organically, very lean, no big sexy launch or anything like that. And it just became very quickly apparent that so many people have this problem. And, at the time, I didn't even fully understand why it's so effective. And at this point, we have a very clear understanding, I think, but yeah, so that's sort of how it got started. And at some point it just was like, if me and these couple hundred people have this problem, there's got to be millions of people out there that we can help. And I don't know, I think basically all of us are lonely. All of us want to be more of whoever we want to be. There's these really common threads and all of us really struggle to like close the gap between who we really want to be and how we're showing up each day. So that mission just also really connected with my heart. Like my whole life has sort of been about that in one way or another. My personal struggles have been about that. So the idea of building a company that was just about providing this epic level of support and meeting people where they're at with a lot of love and acceptance, I just was like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. So, there was a point where I was like, all right, let's do this.
That's great. And from the comments and in the chat, I see a lot of people talking about closing the gap between who we are right now and who we really want to be. I think that resonates with me a lot. where we have all these goals for the long term. I think we have an idea of who we are right now and where we can improve in certain areas. And there's a term you use a lot in some of your other interviews and also on the website around unlocking human potential. And I think that's a really interesting way to put it. Whereas I think inside each one of us, we have this potential to become a better version of ourselves, whatever we decide that is, or however we decide to qualify that. But I think that going back to what you mentioned around coming up with idea, it's a very interesting concept, and it's one of those things that I suspect just doesn't pop into your head, and where you say, well, gee, I plan on just pairing random strangers on the web together to increase productivity. It's really more of a journey for self-discovery, where you have to kind of go through that process yourself and understand what works for you, and then ultimately fast forward to today, it's become this product and this platform where a lot of people have connected and used it to increase their own personal productivity. So with that, I do kind of want to hop back to something we mentioned earlier around mental health. I think it'd be really interesting to revisit that conversation now. So I was listening to an interview you did around a year back with this woman, Victoria Maxwell, around the mental health benefits of using a tool like this. And so back in 2011, when you shifted to remote working, it seemed like you had a pretty rough adjustment. And that's something I also resonate with as well. My company went remote sometime in March. And at the very beginning, over the first few weeks, over the first few months, it was very demotivating to kind of sit at home and not have other people around me. Even as an introvert myself, I found that I always wanted that human connection, sitting and looking at my screen all day, kind of like how we are right now. But ultimately, I still feel a little bit of that human connection with you and everyone else on this call. I just want to hear a little more around whether you planned this discussion of mental health around building the product of Focusmate, or if that was just an unintended positive side effect of starting something like this platform.
It's a good question. It's kind of neither, you know. I think my own learning about mental health was just a byproduct of my different struggles, right? So like feeling the need in myself for this kind of support was just like a response to my own need, you know? So you could think of it, you could like abstract it and be like, oh, we're designing a response to a demand. We're just designing a solution to a demand. But, you know, then there was also this very organic part of it, which was, well, the demand was actually just my own pain. And, you know, and then integrating that with the business experience that I have and sort of starting to see a vision for like, how could this be a product? And, you know, what are the different reasons this could be a great business? So it's sort of just, I think all those pieces came together somewhat organically. Yeah. You know, and you asked about the connection to mental health, you know, just to be more explicit about it. I've actually learned a lot more about productivity and mental health even this year. Excuse me. And one of the kind of cool things I've learned is I think that even the term mental health is a misnomer, because what we're really talking about is like our entire sort of body mind thing. And when we are stressed, when we're anxious, it's actually just it's a form of fight flight, you know. And if you guys and gals are somewhat familiar with the concept of the nervous system, we have these different states that we can be in, and we can be, you know, if we're feeling really safe, you know, good about life, we're in this like peak state called safe and social. And, you know, when we're in that state, like our cognitive function is super on spot, our problem solving ability. But as soon as we start dropping down into flight and fight, and there's something below that, often called freeze, like literally our physiology changes. Our blood flow starts to focus on our limbs and stuff that's like necessary to evade predators and danger and stuff. And our cognitive function actually decreases. And a kind of peculiar thing about humans, unlike other mammals, is that we have this tendency to basically get stuck in fight or flight. And a lot of the experience of that is things like anxiety, but basically a whole slew, stress, and then a whole slew of, you know, diagnosable mental health issues. But, you know, I think especially in this time, like everybody's getting a little taste or a big taste of anxiety, stress. And so it's kind of cool to know that physically what is happening is our bodies are redirecting blood flow to do survival activities and not cognitive activities. And I think most of us, you know, especially if y'all are designers, we'd really like to be optimizing for something more cognitive. But our bodies are saying, no, basically, we have to survive. And learning about how the nervous system affects our cognitive functioning, it's been cool to map that onto Focusmate, because one of the things that happens with Focusmate is you actually get to do what's called co-regulating with another human being. And, you know, Derek, you were talking about being an introvert. I think it's actually a big misconception that introverts somehow just want to be alone. I'm also an introvert, and there's no human that wants to be alone. It's actually really important for us as tribal animals, as mammals, to co-regulate with other human beings. And so, you know, on a Focusmate session, and just to take a step back, a Focusmate session today is a 50-minute video call where you sign on to the video session, you meet your partner, and within about a minute, you each commit to what you're going to work on. You write it down in the chat, and then you just get to work, and you keep each other company, and you can update each other in the chat on your progress. At the end of the 50 minutes, a chime goes off and you check in and you talk about how it went. And so very quickly at the beginning of a Focusmate session, hopefully your partner's smiling, you know, because that's part of the protocol. It's what we encourage you to do. And so it's sort of like, I don't know, when you show up on like a date or something, that's the terrible metaphor to draw here, but like some environment where there's a new person and you want to put on put your best foot forward, right? A job interview or something. So it's like that, where you step into this environment, you're like, all right, I'm going to put my best foot forward here. And so both of you are going to smile and be friendly and be enthusiastic. And so you kind of are upward spiraling each other into this more high functioning cognitive state. Even if you are feeling anxious, it's going to help you. And I experience that all the time. I'm interested to hear your experience too, Derek, but I can be having the worst day. And if I can just get myself to book a Focusmate session and get on there, suddenly my mental health, but really my body-mind health really immediately improves. And then suddenly I'm productive, and suddenly, you know, and then I'm off to the races. So yeah, it's been cool to learn actually about the nervous system and how it affects productivity, and really why one of the reasons why Focusmate is so helpful at helping us improve our cognitive capacity and our productivity.
I think there's so much good stuff in what you said there. And I recently actually got a chance to interview one of the investors behind Focusmate, near Eyal, around the psychology behind Focusmate itself, but also some other topics as well. And he's actually the person part of the reason why I came across Focusmate to begin with. And I think a lot of what you said around mental health really does kind of resonate with me as well, around the piece where it's not only just mental health. I think that is a misnomer, because a lot of anxiety and some of these other issues that we struggle with do end up affecting the physical parts of our bodies as well. And that's something I felt a lot over the past few months, is this sudden bout of anxiety, realizing that I'm going to be alone at home for like the next few months, and that I'll need to find some way to manage it. But to go back to what you asked around my experience with Focusmate, I've been using it for around a year now, and I definitely see the benefits of committing yourself to one of those sessions, because once you're on a call with someone, it really forces you, not in a bad way. I think it really is that reinforcement where someone else is on the other line with you. They're seeing your video, you're seeing their video, and you really kind of have to put on this facade, this farce that you're productive and you're willing to work with them to improve your productivity and really work on something during the session. So I can't even tell you how many times where I've been kind of lying in bed and I realized, oh, I don't want to do this for the rest of the day. So how about let me just put some time on the calendar with another Focusmater, and let's get things started. So definitely hear that a lot. And then in terms of the types of people that I've met on Focusmate, I think that's another reason why I really like the platform, is that you're meeting people from across the world. A lot of people are from the US, some people I've met from Europe, other people from Asia. So you're really using the platform as a way to connect with others online during this time. And one question I have for you that's, I would say that's a little more on the fun side is I primarily use Focusmate for schoolwork or when I need to focus on actual work. But it seems like there's a lot of other reasons people might want to use Focusmate to get things done on the platform. So I guess for you, can you tell us some of the more interesting things that people can use Focusmate for, or things that you've heard other people using Focusmate for?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said about also connecting with different people on Focusmate. There's a lot of cool stories around that too. Yeah, so actually today I used Focusmate to do some stretching and yoga. It's sort of been a couple days since I really took care of myself like that. And I was like, I could use some accountability. So yeah, my first Focusmate session today, just did 50 minutes of stretching and yoga. Similarly, a lot of people will meditate on there. Playing or practicing a musical instrument. Some people will just actually use it to hold themselves accountable to relax. So I want to actually read and wind down at the end of the evening. And actually, the flip side of that, a ton of people, probably the biggest, chunk of people use it as a way to get their day started. So they'll just book a Focusmate session at the same time every morning. Some people will do it as a morning routine structure. Some people will do it as the first hour of the workday after their morning routine. Cooking, meal prep, decluttering. If any of you are GTD, getting things done enthusiasts, a lot of people use it for their weekly review. So any kind of, weekly rituals like that, it can be really powerful. So yeah, I'm sure I'm missing about 50 things, but pretty much, yeah, pretty much anything that you feel safe doing in front of another person, which is a long list.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that you can use Focusmate for, and there are some guidelines around what you can and can't do, and then we won't talk about that right now. But honestly, anything you can do on camera, in a safe environment, and your partner's okay with it, sounds like that's something you can do. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're sort of tiptoeing around it, but we as a company and as a community just take safety as absolutely the highest priority. And so we're sort of militant about that side of things. So, some people will say, don't brush your teeth on Focusmate, stay out of the bathroom. Really our protocol though is just you have to be on camera. You could step away for a couple minutes, for something. And wear semi-professional attire basically. And yeah, we just have a zero tolerance policy for really anything that is not just getting your stuff done.
Yeah, I've done 300 sessions over the past year or so. I haven't had one bad session yet. All of my partners have been great. And I think Focusmate and the community behind it really does kind of back this principle that we really want to produce this inclusive community of other people who think similarly and really want to improve themselves and unlock their human potential. But there are ways to report people. Everyone in the Focusmate Facebook group has been super supportive of each other. And we're all at different stages of our lives. So for some people, they might be working on work, but as you mentioned, some people need that extra boost of motivation to really just get up and do some of the basic things, such as brushing your teeth and kind of getting ready for the day. So anything goes as long as it really helps you become that better version of yourself.
Yeah, really.
So with that, yeah, I do want to shift gears a bit and talk a bit about kind of the most critical initiative you're working on now. I want to hear a bit about kind of the team behind Focusmate, who's involved, and what your plans are moving forward, because I know there's a lot of stuff in the works. You guys have been working really hard on this over the past few years. So do just want to hand it off to you and kind of hear a little bit about your plans.
Great, yeah. So our strategy right now is focused on we're kind of nerds about strategy. So it's focused on what we call the social connection hypothesis, which is, it basically says, you know, our users and our potential users care about the feeling of being, like how connected they feel to their partner, as well as the expectation of how connected they're going to feel to their partner. So to draw like a negative contrast, at least for me, one of the few negative kinds of experiences that I can have on Focusmate is if I have a partner who doesn't smile at all, who just says, "What are you working on?" And there's zero friendliness. And it's amazing just the difference between a very subtle, "Hey, how are you? You know, what are you working on?" But it's an example of how sensitive, you know, we talked about being in a safe and social state and being in a fight or flight state. We're really sensitive to cues from other people. And so we hypothesized that there's a bunch of different ways that we can enhance your feeling of social connection with your partner while holding productivity constant, or actually further improving it, because you're looking forward to seeing that person. You feel like your style of doing Focusmate is similar, or you're working on something really similar to that person, so you feel more camaraderie. And so there's a bunch of different sort of flavors of how we hypothesize, how we think social connection could enhance the experience. And actually, you know, you alluded to, we've created a Design Buddies community on Focusmate, which means that you can partner up with other members of Design Buddies to do a Focusmate session. So that's just one example. So yeah, I would say we have a lot of work cut out for us to just fully flesh out a bunch of those different possibilities and really see what takes off. And as far as the team, we're a really small team. It's 4 of us. So myself, a sort of product focused person, a software engineer, and a customer support person. So yeah, we're, you know, it's kind of everything we need for right now. And we're trying to stay lean and sort of be a healthy business.
That sounds great. But Taylor, you gave away our secret. That Design Buddies group was supposed to be our surprise at the end. So we'll give out more details at the end. That's our surprise. We'll briefly touch about it right now. So what are groups on Focusmate? Can you give us a sense of what that is?
Yeah. There's a big surprise coming at the end, everyone. Get excited. Yeah, so, you know, we had this sense, and we've also just had a lot of demand from communities that exist already in the world that want to have some sort of private garden within Focusmate, basically. So, you know, that could be your company. You know, you want to do co-working sessions with your colleagues. It could be like your alma mater, where you want to, you know, sync up with people that you went to the same college as. It could be you're taking an online course, right? You follow some influencer who teaches about design, and you know, you want to do some of the coursework with somebody else in that community. So yeah, it's just the functionality is really simple. It basically just says, hey, if someone else in this community is available at this time, I'd like to work with them, or we'll put you together. And it's in a pilot phase right now. So that's all it does. And we're really just learning about like what else communities like this want to have on Focusmate.
Yeah, and I think that really backs up what you just said around building that sense of camaraderie and community, so that people who have similar interests, people who come from a similar group or are part of a similar organization, can come together and really connect outside of that organization, but also help each other along in the process. So for us, just to kind of frame the group that you're building for Design Buddies, now that we've given the surprise away, is that we're looking at coming up with a group for all Design Buddies members. And for us, we're primarily a Discord channel. We're at over 9,000 members at this point, and Grace can touch a bit about touch on that later in the session. But the only way that people interact is really through chat. And although some people do kind of found their own book clubs and game clubs outside of the platform, having that one-on-one connection outside of the Discord server and using the time on Focusmate to help each other out and really have those chats that make the organization a little more personal is a really good way to go about it. And for me, as a designer, I've met other designers on Focusmate. It's really great just spending the last 10 minutes of a session chatting with them, and just asking and learning a bit about their experience, and also telling them about what you're working on and how you can help them. I've actually produced professional connections on there as well, aside from just social ones. So I think it's a really great feature. Hoping that our members get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, just to build on what you said, like, Discord's great. Chat-based communities are great because they have such a low barrier to entry. You can just jump right in. You can just read other people's stuff. But yeah, you don't get a lot of feeling of connection. And one of the things that was sort of unexpected that we found about Focusmate is it's not social, right? You're not there to network. And in fact, we basically say you'll be kicked off if you do any form of networking or business development. What it is, it's like, it's so structured that you don't have to think about what to say. You just show up and, like we said, you're friendly, but you really just get to work. And, maybe Derek, you can share a little bit more of how it's unfolded for you, but there's something about not having to think about what to say. It's not like meeting somebody for a lunch. You're really just doing your own work, but you still are like kind of getting a sense of the other person just from that minute, and just from being on camera with each other. I think we're very intuitive creatures. And so you just get this sense of like, oh, there's a little there's a little resonance here. And oh, this person's also a designer. You can check out their profile, right? And you can learn about them just from their profile. And so, by the end of the session, when the bell goes off, you might say, oh, like, hey, I saw you were working on this. Can I ask you a question? Right. And so you've done your 50 minutes, you've kept your agreements. But now you may have those 10 minutes before the top of the next hour. And if both people are interested, you could spend a couple minutes just getting acquainted. And actually, speaking to our roadmap and what we're working on, we'll add functionality so you can save that person as a favorite partner, and then make it more likely that you'll work together again in the future. And so you'll just see that person, once or twice a week for a while, and actually get to build a connection that way. So it's cool in that it's not for networking, but it actually builds a much deeper sense of belonging and connection than you'll get on a Discord or something like that.
Yeah, that's going to be a great feature, because sometimes I do book sessions outside of the platform. I'm sorry here. I actually book sessions on Discord with my friend because it's hard to right now to pair up with someone else, but that feature is going to be really helpful when you just want to send someone a link and say, hey, let's hop on a call for 50 minutes and just work on our own individual thing. But I think you're right that it's very intuitive when you get into the session, that there's no script to memorize. You're really just telling them what you're going to be working on that session. Sometimes it takes 10 seconds, sometimes it takes 30 seconds. But one thing I really like about the community is that when I first got started, when I first did my first few sessions, it tells you the number of sessions that you have. And for the person on the other side, they'll know that you're new to Focusmate. So they'll welcome you to Focusmate. If you're confused about anything, they'll walk you through it. It's a very inclusive community. And I've tried to do that a lot more with anyone who's new to the platform. Is really kind of saying, hello, welcome to Focusmate, and giving that really good first impression when you get started. So I definitely think that if anyone's worried about not knowing what to say when they're on their first Focusmate call, someone on the other side will be there to help you through it. So I wouldn't worry about it at all. But the last piece around networking, I think those last 10 minutes are reserved for stuff like this, where you can build on top of the connection you've developed, even though 10 minutes might not be enough. Dropping in your social media account and your email and connecting outside of the platform. I've probably produced dozens of connections that way, people who are just really fascinating to talk to, and people I keep in my network, hoping that I'll land another session with them on Focusmate.
Well, you'll be happy to hear it. That is our next feature that's being released. So
looking forward to it.
You'll be able to invite someone using a link to your profile.
Cool. With that, I think that's all the questions I had. We'll open up for Q&A. If anyone has questions for Taylor, feel free to drop it in the chat below. Otherwise, you'll be able to see Grace's links that she posted on joining Design Buddies if you aren't a part of us already. And also you'll find a networking sheet there where you can connect with other people in the community and also learn a bit more about Taylor. So with that, let's see if anyone has any questions. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll see if we can comb through the list and see if anyone has questions. Yeah,
raise your hand if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, feel free to type in the chat if you're more comfortable with that as well. And at the end, we're going to take a group photo that lasts 5 minutes and also continually revealing our surprise.
Worst guest.
We won't have you on again, sorry. So I do see one question from Kathy. The question is, have you thought about other communities like startup or other masterminds?
Yeah, great question. Yep, we've actually had a ton of, well, I'm not totally sure what you mean the startup community. Yeah, there are private groups on Focusmate for startup communities, coaching communities, masterminds. There's even other accountability businesses that include Focusmate in whatever they're offering. It might be a more hands-on thing like a mastermind, but they want to have a lighter touch experience like Focusmate to go with it, so that in between your interactions, you have a way to, connect and actually follow through on stuff. So absolutely. Let's see another question here. You want to read it, Derek?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. So Angela B says, or asks, do you plan to expand your staffing or do you want to stay as lean as possible?
We want
to join the team.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I join too?
We'll interpret it that way. And understandably so. This is by far the best place I've ever worked. Yeah, it's just, I'd say it's a really safe space, which has been life-changing for me. Yes, absolutely, we plan to expand. I'll speak for myself and say, our sort of superficial mission, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, our sort of central mission is around really helping people, be who they want to be, right? Follow through. And for me, it feels very important to try to, number one, just reach as many people as we can. I think it's impossible to measure the number of people who are struggling or could just use more help. And I think when we're able to really follow through on the things that matter to us, sure, there's a selfish aspect to that, but I think it proliferates into everything around us. It makes us better, parents and partners and colleagues and kinder. Like the more that we follow through on who we want to be, the sort of the more the ripple effects are outward in the world. So yeah, I'd say our theory of change is really how many people can we help to become more of who they want to be and to change the world in that way. And, a lot of our work is very directly having a positive impact in the world too. So if we can help Derek do a great job with Design Buddies and reach more people and build this beautiful, inclusive space, right? That has a huge impact. And so for every one of Derek, there's thousands more on Focusmate, and we'd like to reach millions of people and have that kind of interlocking effect. And we're also really motivated to build a really different kind of company and workplace too. We talked about being inclusive, and I think this is a time that the world is really ready for a new kind of company. And there's a lot of sort of fledgling models of people doing stuff like that out there. But we spend so much of our lives at work that it's really a waste to not use our work as a medium for human transformation, for human healing. So yeah, there's sort of this multi-layered mission, at least as I sense it, for myself, where, it's not about grandiosity. It's let's just let's go gangbusters and see how many people we can reach and how many ripples we can have. So yeah, we'd like to get as big as we can, not for the sake of being big, but like, let's go for it, you know? So hopefully we'll be able to hire lots and lots of people, but not yet.
Yeah, not for the sake of getting big, but for the sake of doing social good, I think is a good way to put it. So with that, there's a bunch more questions. These are all really, really good questions. Keep them coming. So another question that Jenny has is, would it be possible to expand more people to join the session than having just 2 people? And I can briefly touch upon this too. I know that we have those Friday Focusmate community co-working sessions that Nathan hosts on Fridays for big blocks and big chunks where I think a lot of people can join the same Zoom chat and then really just buckle down and get to work. But I'll let you add to that if there's anything you have.
Yeah. So, and we actually just doubled it. So now we have 2, they're 4-hour blocks. We have 2 of them on Fridays. Nathan's planning a 24-hour marathon also. So that happens, you know, that happens outside the platform. We just posted in our Facebook group, but we're going to eventually integrate stuff like that into the platform. So you can just book it directly. So yeah, we're really open to different formats of supporting people. Yeah.
Cool. So Kat has a question around, do you differentiate between productivity and rejuvenation focused sessions?
Not in any way in the software. We don't differentiate. And personally, I don't think of one as productivity and the other as something else. You know, I think it's really just about what do you want to be doing with your time? And if you want to be rejuvenating, you know, could not support you more in that endeavor. And, you know, totally encourage you to use Focusmate for that.
So Hi has an interesting follow-up to that, and it's similar, and I probably know your answers to it. So what if both of the people just do nothing together?
I'm not even sure how to answer. I guess, you know, what is doing nothing? If you feel like sitting and being contemplative, or maybe just sitting and relaxing and doing nothing is going to be great for you, I think you would receive a lot of support for doing that. If your question's more about, and Hi, you can feel free to clarify. If your question's more about like, if both people just slack off, what happens? It's pretty hard to do that on a Focusmate session. It's really, the structure really supports you. And I'll say I've had many sessions where I was moving really slowly and where I got distracted and where I checked Facebook. The thing is, if I wasn't on Focusmate, I would have been taking a nap or eating ice cream or whatever. And so having that structure and getting distracted and then being like, oh, Derek's there, I'm going to like get back to it. It makes a huge difference. So for me, it's not about like perfection or some like ideal of productivity. It's like, it's always making a positive impact on my level of focus.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way as well. Doing nothing is doing something usually. And I would say that it's perfectly fine to slack off, but your partner might call you out on it. You're going to feel guilty afterwards. So it really just comes down to the individual.
Yeah. And Hi, at the end, you do check in and talk to your partner about how it went. You can always lie. Like it's a zero pressure environment. It's really just like, it's a place where you just feel more like doing stuff. Like it just creates this happier, healthier, you know, we talked about like going up the ladder into a more cognitively activated state. It just helps, you know, you're there because you want to do stuff, and it's going to put you in a state of mind and body that's going to help you do that.
So Fernando has another question. He says, hey, Taylor, thanks for this talk. It was really interesting. I don't know if you could talk about your process of validating this idea or how the first meetings were in the beginning. Also, what kinds of things you learned that you didn't think of in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a big question. I would say, you know, some of the things I touched on were just like, how could we keep it really simple? So one of the ways I first tried to validate the demand was I posted just a link to a Google form where I asked people to share their share their email address and answer a few questions. And, just being willing to share your email address and then take 5 or 10 minutes to actually answer some questions, especially if they're kind of vulnerable questions about productivity or procrastination. It's not the same as somebody giving you their credit card, but, the first time I posted that, I think I got 25 people filled it out just from posting in one Facebook group. And to me, that's a strong indicator that a lot of people, number one, resonated with this really brief post where I just was like, hey, me and a friend are trying out this thing, virtual co-working, to tackle our procrastination. If you're interested, would love to have you just fill out this link, right? And so, yeah, people responding to just a couple simple words and taking the time, that's jumping over some kind of bar, right? So, yeah, we were very incremental. And like our first MVP, I put that together. I'm not a software developer, and I put that together using, there's much better tools now for like building things without code. And if you're a designer, you're in a great spot to build something nice. But yeah, I just use like WordPress and Google Sheets and Zapier, and it sort of worked, and it was like better than just DMing people on the Facebook group. So I know that's kind of a high level answer to your question, Fernando, but yeah, we just tried to really do the lean startup process as much as possible. And I think another really important part of how we've approached things is to try to stay really focused. Kind of a blessing and a curse of what we're working on is the number of possibilities. And people have asked questions about like, hey, what about a group thing, more multiple people? And what about, having different ways of matching up? And I think there's probably hundreds of feature ideas and different things. And we've tried to just stay really focused on making this one kind of experience on Focusmate better and better, rather than sort of diversifying. And I think that's served us well. It's been really hard to do. And things that we learned that we didn't think in the beginning. I think I'll punt on that one. It's a big question. I'd have to think about some more, but there's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah, and with a team of 4, you really do need to stay lean. If people want to ask you questions, can they connect with you on LinkedIn afterwards, or shoot you an email to follow up?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. On LinkedIn, just add a note when you connect with me. And my email address is just taylor@focusmate.com.
Cool. So Leanne has a question around, do you plan on adding an option where we match with people who are doing the same thing? So sometimes I need to declutter, meditate, or exercise, but I feel like I'm going to distract my partner, even if they say it's okay.
Yeah, I would say that's a really common request that we get, Leanne, and something that we'd like to experiment with and just see what the impact is, both in terms of how excited you are to work with that person and then how effective it is at actually helping you get that done. But yeah, like decluttering, I think is one of the most common examples of people wanting to just have somebody else that's decluttering so they can kind of bounce around their apartment or whatever.
Gotcha. So I'm not sure if this next question is a question or not, but how many dimensions of each human can we elevate?
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So Simona has a question around, can you go into how people would establish goals for the session? Is it only spoken word, or is there a way to create a task list that can be shared between the two people?
Thanks, Simona. Yeah, so there's two aspects. One is, when you meet your partner, I meet Derek, I say, hey, Derek, what are you working on? And Derek's going to share with me. And then he's going to ask me, Taylor, what are you working on? And I'm going to share with him. So there's a verbal aspect, and there's research that shows that improves our productivity. And this is currently optional. There's a chat interface. And so a lot of users will also write down what their plan is for the session. And it's basically a repetition of what they just said to their partner, but I always write it down because I just find it's helpful. I might forget what my next task was. And so I have it written down. I can just look at it, and I know my partner can see it too. So at the end of the session, they can ask me, how did that go? Or they can they can listen to what I'm saying, about what I achieved, and they can look at my list right there. So we also plan to find ways to enhance that, maybe make it a little easier to actually use the written form of accountability. And we're open to other ideas too, if you have them.
Awesome. And putting your goals in the chat is great too. I love it when people tell me they're working on chemistry homework. Their goal is to do 5 questions, and then they'll update me after they finish each one. For some people, it might be distracting, but sometimes they'll give me a keep it up, or I'll give them a keep it up, and that's just additional motivation to keep it going. Cool. So we're definitely running up on time. I think I'm going to go through a few more questions here. So what are your plans? So Aaron's question, I think we touched upon. And then what are your plans for expansion in the next year? More grassroots work, more media exposure? How do you think getting the word out will work best for your mission?
Right now we're really focused on, this is kind of a buzzword, product-led growth, and specifically just making the product better. So, for example, the feature that we're shipping next enables you to, I could send my private booking link to Derek, who's already on Focusmate, but I could also send it to any one of you who's new to Focusmate, and you could do your first session with me. So, that's an example of how we want to enhance the product in ways that also makes it easier to grow the community. And we suspect there are more opportunities like that. So we talked about like having big group sessions, those could be open to the public, right? Where your first interaction could be a group co-working session, and then you get to hear about Focusmate and maybe feel like, okay, I can try a one-on-one now. I feel good about this community. So we want to really focus on things that we can do that will enhance the product, and not just, I think there is great value in many other forms of marketing. But to the extent that we can focus on the product as a way to grow, I think that's more sustainable. So we want to see if we can unlock those first. And fortunately, we get a lot of press, we get a lot of chatter. The idea of strangers working together on the internet is like a great headline. So we just let the press run with that and take their calls. And, I think that helps more than it hurts. So
just giving that tagline out, I've seen people run away from it, and some people run towards it. So it's a very polarizing idea or ideas. I think it's so interesting.
Internally, actually, that's something we talk about, which is like, how do we get people to describe Focusmate in a different way so that it doesn't scare people away? Because the word stranger is pretty charged. When you try Focusmate, it doesn't feel like a stranger. It feels like, you have something really meaningful in common, and you're like really happy that they're there. And it's exciting to meet a new person who's like, in India, like working on their studies or something. And that's, we're talking about design, or y'all are designers. Like, we're really also thinking about that holistically. Like, how do we create an experience that people talk about in a way that also is easier to spread the word?